Florida State versus Miami, the rivalry of rivalries. Guys, it's going to be a sold-out game, 7:30 Saturday night in Doak Campbell Stadium. I cannot wait. But before we get to that point, we're going to talk about this Miami matchup. As you guys know, we are getting ready to drop or probably already dropped our preview by the time you watch this. But every week, we've been doing our best to go get an inside look at the opponent because nobody knows them better than the people that cover that team. And so this week, we are grateful to be joined by Joe from the Miami Knights podcast. They do a great job over there covering the Hurricanes. You know, we might not love them on the field, but we can be friends for the show at least, for this 1 week, man. Just really excited for this game. I cannot wait. This is two just storied programs. This is the first time we've been ranked together in the same game in a few years. So I think really the excitement is building up for this one. So, man, let's jump right into this. And my first one, I just want to ask you about the rivalry as a whole, man. Give me your favorite, just like memory, maybe a personal experience, or just some thoughts on this rivalry, what it means to you, how big this rivalry is in a national perspective, and just what you love about it. Because, man, this is my favorite game of the year by far.
Oh yeah. I mean, this is everything. Like, as far as college football rivalries goes, I'm biased, obviously, but I just think these two logos together, the classics that we've seen, you can't beat Miami FSU. I mean, I've been playing the war chant in my apartment all week, trying to get myself, players are doing it at practice. I'm trying to get myself in that game day environment, watching clips of all the old games. So you can't beat it. I think for me, my favorite memory is kind of a weird one because I'm 30 years old. So for most of my life, Miami has not been very good. 2001 was a long time ago. I was 6 years old. My dad raised me a Miami Hurricane fan. I didn't have a choice there. And so, I mean, I thought 6 years old, we're winning national championship. My life's going to be great. So when I was like really starting to follow it myself, kind of middle school into high school, that's when FSU was just owning us. I think it was 7 straight going into 2017. So
shout
my
out
favorite
Jimbo.
Memory, shout out Jimbo, good Lord, and Jameis and Dalvin Cook still running on Miami.
Right.
I got to say my favorite memory is that 2017 game. And it's like records wise and kind of national stakes, it meant nothing, but to a Miami fan, it looked like we were about to lose. I think it was going to be 8 straight at that point, and then to just have the finish that happened and the last second touchdown. Like I've never been happier as a fan in that moment. So I was just screaming. We were with some family friends at the time, and they had like, when FSU took the lead to go down to go up in the last minute, pizza had just got brought in. They're like, pizza's here. And I'm like, yeah, now is not the time.
Yeah.
But Miami goes ahead and marches down the field for the game-winning touchdown. So that to me is the best memory, but every game just seems to bring its own memories. And I expect this one, it could be another classic on our hands.
Oh man, I totally agree. I mean, I always tell people, like, I dislike Florida, but like Miami is just the main rival for me because there's always so much trash talk between us two. Mm-hmm. There's always, you see the scrums before and after the game, halftime and stuff like that. This game it means so much. It's always meant a lot from a national perspective, but it means so much to the fan bases. It means so much to the state of Florida. I mean, people sometimes from the outside of the state kind of laugh at the state championship thing. They don't understand what that means to us. So it's huge, man. This one, and this is going to be a good one. Like I said, this is the first time we've both kind of been up here in a little while, because we've, like you said, man, kind of over the course of your fandom and a lot of my fandom too, because I'm only 37. One team has typically outweighed the other heavily. So I feel like this is going to be one of the best games, but it's always a pretty good game. Outside of a couple blowouts we've traded, it's usually a one-score game. And so, man, let's talk about Miami and this season and kind of how things are going so far. Obviously, being 4-0 and number 3 in the country is got to be pretty darn good, right? That's feeling great for you guys. But I know you guys had a lot of high expectations coming into this season with the pieces that you had, getting Carson Beck from the portal and the new defensive coordinator. But I want to get your thoughts on through the first 4 games, and I know one of those was an FCS game, but how has Miami looked to you just from a 1,000-foot standpoint? Do you feel like they have kind of met the expectations you were looking for? Is it like we're 4-0 and number 3, but maybe we're not as good in some areas as I thought? Or is it like, man, this is not what I expected. This team is so much better than I thought, and we might go on a run this year?
Yeah, I think going into the season, the expectations were that Miami was going to have a very, very good offensive line and a very good defensive line. outside of that, there were a lot of question marks. I think bringing Carson Beck in, we felt good about Carson Beck. There is just that kind of underlying, which Carson Beck are we going to get type deal?
Mm-hmm.
Will he be able to lead? I mean, we're coming off a generational offense, a generational quarterback. So we knew there was going to be a drop at offense. Didn't expect it to be much. And so I think we've met that expectation. It's been a drop, but offense has been extremely efficient. The biggest part that has exceeded expectations is the defense. Last year's defense was horrendous. I mean, it literally cost us a college football playoff berth. And the fact with Cam Ward and what we did on offense that we couldn't even make the ACC championship last year just speaks volumes on how bad the defense was. And so it was like we knew it had to get better, but was it going to be still bad? And through 4 games, the defense has been very good and has complemented the offense tremendously. So I think expectations were high going into the season, but really outside of a few, like there's obviously areas that can improve on, it's exceeded. I mean, we could not have asked for a better start to the season. You see, with when we saw that we're opening up against Notre Dame, we've got Florida on the schedule. Like those first 4 games, it's like we could easily be 2-2 going into Florida State week when we were looking at the schedule, and it's been pretty dominant so far. So I think it's exceeded expectations, even though expectations were pretty high.
Yeah, I mean, that defense is totally different. I said on our preview show the other day, I was like, when you look at last year's Miami team, I mean, that defense was a boat anchor. You just had the boat anchor tied to a speedboat, which was your offense, right?
Yeah.
And this year, it's just kind of like, two freighters pushing together. Like you got a defense that maybe the offense isn't as good, but the defense is so much better. It really doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be last year's offense. It doesn't have to be Cam Ward back there because they just have to do enough to be supported by that defense. And it has been an impressive turnaround. Now, I still wonder what it's going to look like on Saturday night because I do think this will be the biggest offensive challenge so far this season because, Florida's just, geez, there's a whole lot going on there. Well, not a whole lot going on there, should I say. But, yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. And really, for us, I was like, we thought we'd be coming out. People talk about the Virginia loss. I was like, man, we expected to probably be 3-1 at this point. Anyway, the loss just didn't come where you thought it would.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think you're right there. So you make a good point. Like you could have been one or the other, but to come out 4-0, you can't be mad at that because sometimes it doesn't matter how it looks. It just matters that you win. But I do want to ask you about one of these games before we move to offense and defense. And that was the Florida game. Now I look at that game and I was like, okay, obviously Miami got the win. I think if you watched that game, you saw that it was 13-7 with 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter. I thought Miami was going to win by 3 scores. I know they scored twice in the last 4 minutes of that game. Beck did not play particularly well in that game, but the defense shut down Florida's offense. Like Florida's offense is terrible, but you guys made them look like a peewee football team. I mean, they didn't even have 200 yards of offense. It was ridiculous. But when I watched us play at UVA, like even if we'd have came out on top and won that game, there were some red flags that were exposed for sure. So when I look at that Florida game, obviously it was probably, I would consider maybe the worst game of the year for you guys so far, just from the way it played out. You still won going away with the late scores. But were there any red flags in that game that was exposed, or was it just, man, like Florida's got a good defense and it was just a tough test?
Yeah, I mean, Florida does have a good defense. And I think, first off, it was pouring down rain most of the game. So there is part of that I look at Beck's performance and been like, no one was throwing the ball well in this kind of weather. But he did have his worst game of the year. And it's coming off of, he threw a couple picks against USF that, if you look at the film, there was many reasons why they happened that weren't really on Beck, but
right.
It's like, so we're like, all right, we saw the interceptions. That's what we've been hearing about going into the Florida game. And he was missing throws that normally he makes. And so it is that, I would say that's the biggest red flag and the biggest like kind of anxiety mark going into FSU is like, all right, Beck, we've seen like through the first 3 games, one of them against an FCS opponent, you've looked really good. You had a bad game. How does he respond? I also think in that Florida game, there was a point where Miami was up 13-0 and it was 4th and 1. They're going for it. And there was kind of like it was like one of those just short little handoffs. There was like some movement in the middle and then he bounces out, scores a touchdown. they called it back on a late whistle,
Oh yeah,
saying that it was, I mean, it was a
that was
garbage
BS,
whistle.
man. That was
So to
terrible.
me, it's like we were about to go up 20-0 at that point. Florida would then have to just throw the ball. Like the score at the end of the game didn't really indicate just how much Miami dominated that game. But it's like, yeah, the defense played extremely well, but Florida's offense has so many issues. So I would say really the only I would have liked to have beaten Florida by more always, but
Right.
on the box score, it was a domination. But I would say the biggest red flag, if you had to pick one, was Beck's performance. I mean, he's so good at making the check down throws. He's so good at hitting guys on screens, like hitting them in motion so they can run up field, and he was just missing those throws that week. So that's going to be the biggest thing going into FSU is like we need to see Beck kind of settle in. He was also getting pressured by Florida's defense, and what we've heard is he's not as good under pressure, and we saw that. So it's going to be important for him to get that protection because when he sits back, has time. I mean, the guy he's got a great arm strength. He's deadly accurate when he's being the Carson Beck that we've seen. So I think that to me, that was my biggest takeaway from Florida game.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head because when I watched it, really the biggest takeaway was like, man, he's just missing some simple throws, right? That he doesn't typically miss. And, my number one key for Florida State winning this game is to try and get pressure on Carson Beck. But easier said than done. Good luck with that. Only 17 pressures this entire season. He is the least pressured quarterback in the country right now in FBS. So, I mean, that's going to be a challenge for Florida State. And like you said, when he has time to get the ball out, he's lethally efficient. I think he set like the record for most consecutive completions against Bethune-Cookman or something. I mean, he's a very
straight.
Yeah, he's an efficient quarterback. And the other thing is I know he can run because I watched him a lot at Georgia. He just hasn't had to yet. So I think people forget about that aspect too. Maybe he's not Tommy Castellanos, but he can pick up some yards with his legs for sure. Now, before we talk about the offense and defense and get into some of the X's and O's of this game, something that I kind of like to just get a breast on because maybe we don't follow it as closely. Are there any key injuries or players or anything like that maybe Miami will be down for this game that Florida State fans should know about? Obviously, like last week, Virginia had their starting center out. Apparently, it didn't make a difference, but, those are the type of big ones. We got, I think we have one or two guys that are questionable for this game, but is there anybody that's really important in this game that's not going to be present on Saturday, or at least might not be there on Saturday night?
Yeah, I always joke that because Mario Cristobal, he will tell you that a guy is about ready to play and that guy's out for the year. So you just never know with Miami with injuries. It's so frustrating. But I will say the overall very healthy, which has been good. The two guys, JoJo Trader, who is a wide receiver and had kind of shined at the end of last season, especially in the bowl game. And he's got speed that we are missing on the wide receiver side. He hasn't played all year, really, maybe a few snaps against Notre Dame. There's a lot of speculation as to why he hasn't played. Injury is probably the reason. And it's been one of those things where it's like, he could be back this week. He could be back this week. And we need him back because it's just, one thing that's missing on our offense is that speed at wide receiver and the ability to kind of hit you over the top. So very anxious to see if JoJo Trader will be there. And then Jordan Lyle, the running back, he got dinged up against Notre Dame. Again, he's our speed back. So when you complement Jordan Lyle with the big bruisers of Mark Fletcher and Marty Brown, like that's something that we've been missing in the running game. Cause like at the end, he's lethal at the end of games where we've kind of been bruising teams running up the middle, and then you put in fresh legs and a speed guy and it can kind of be lights out. So those are the two guys that we don't know if they're going to go for FSU. I think coming off a bye week bodes well for us that at least one of them will, but it'll just be another weapon on offense that we need.
Yeah, it's funny, the new injury reports and all that stuff, and the ACC's like, we're not tying a fine structure to it. We're just gonna hope we're gonna go on the honor system. And I'm like, with college football coaches, I'm sure that's gonna go well. No one's gonna, everyone's gonna be completely honest with each other on that one. Oh, good luck.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about that offense. Obviously, Carson Beck takes over for Cam Ward. Look, like you said, he was a generational player. Nobody can be Cam Ward because Cam Ward was a special guy. But Carson Beck, again, a guy who's made 31 starts in his career. He played 2 years at Georgia, played a lot of high-level football. You guys have a really good offensive line that is a massive unit. You got 329 average pounds, I think. The one of the tackles is like 6'8". I mean, they're huge. But
Yeah.
that's what Mario Cristobal builds his teams from the inside out, which is a very smart approach. Got some talented running backs that you just hinted at, and you do have some pretty good receivers there. The Malachi Tony kid looks legit. So like we said, man, it might not be last year's #1 ranked offense, but it doesn't have to be with that defense. So talk me through this offense. What are some of the things that they like to do from an offensive perspective? And then is there you can talk through personnel or whatever you want. I'll give you the floor for this one. But then is there a perceived weakness with this team? Because I usually always ask the other opponents, like, okay, we know they got a good offensive line, all this stuff, but where is a weak point on this offense, if there is one?
Yeah, listen, like we already said, last year's offense was generational. This offense is not better than last year's offense, but it is more efficient. And when you couple that with the strong defense, like this is what we've been looking for in a Mario Cristobal offense, where it is slow, it is methodical, we're not going to put up crazy points on the scoreboard. We're not scoring quick, but we are picking up like our third down conversion rate is great. Like we are just slowly, methodically driving down the field and kind of, I mean, like teams are just submitting to our like will. Like they're just getting out physicaled by that offensive line. So it's very much a run first offense. We're running up the middle. There's very few outside sweeps. There's no tosses. There's no counters. It's like, you might know we're running up the middle. We know we're running up the middle. Try to stop us type offense. And so obviously when you have that kind of running game, it opens up the passing game. And that's what we've seen. I think we knew going into the season when we were looking at quarterback, looking at the portal, we just needed someone to be a game manager. Cam Ward single-handedly won us a few games last year.
Yeah.
We knew we didn't need that this year with our defense that was going to be improved. So it's like, can we just have a game manager that can make the throws, that can lead the offense down the field? And that's what I think we have in Carson Beck. Receivers, that was a big question mark going into the season. We had a huge turnover in the receiver room. Our best receiver transferred to Alabama. And then our Xavier Restrepo, who was our most he caught everything. He was like our third down guy, great slot receiver. He went to the NFL, ended up getting cut by the Titans, but whatever. And so we had to, that was like, who's going to fill these roles? Malachi Tony, who you mentioned, I mean, the kid against Notre Dame, he's 17 years old and balling out against Notre Dame. So it's like, we knew he was going to be good, but it's like, this guy's now a everyday starter. And he's honestly a leader on the offense, which is crazy for a true freshman like that. We've got some more big size, Josh Moore, who's a freshman. He's got some size on the receiving room that we've desperately missed. I would say the weakness on this offense, two areas of weakness right now. There hasn't been much tight end usage. Tight ends, and Miami used to be known as tight end U, and tight ends used to be lethal for us. It just hasn't been there. Elijah Lofton, we expected to have a huge season. He played well against Florida. That was like his first kind of game that he really did anything. So we'd like to see more of that. And then Bowman, the other tight end transfer, he played really bad against Florida. A couple really bad missed blocks, a couple miscommunications where he didn't even know what route he was running. So it's like tight ends have got to step up because they're a key part of Cristobal's offense. And then I mentioned it with the speed and like trying to get JoJo Trader back. We really don't have the guy that can hit you over the top and like just take the top off a defense. And so when you are able to run the ball like Miami, you'd like to be able to run play action and then just kill somebody deep that when FSU's in man coverage. We haven't seen that this year. So to me, that's probably the biggest weakness is just the ability to kill them over the top. But overall, this offense has been so efficient. I mean, it's everything we've wanted in a Cristobal offense where it's like that offensive line, when you can run the ball like that and control the trenches, they're hard to beat. We'll control the clock. We'll convert in the red zone, and then our defense will hopefully get a stop. So that's winning football.
Yeah, and it's funny when we talked about it on our preview, it's like it's not a flashy offense. They're just going to line up and try and outman you and just run down your throat, and that's kind of in Cristobal's DNA, right? And so that's why you build the offensive line like you do. Now, it does make me happy to hear you guys don't like to try and take the edges because we have a really hard time defending the edges. So that actually makes me a little bit excited there. And I will say one thing to what you talked about with the speed is the one thing in this game that people have to understand is like Florida State and Miami have really, really good team speed. So you're going to see a lot of, you're going to have to be quick on those open field tackles. You're going to have to do a lot of play with a lot of discipline, because both of these teams have speed on both sides of the ball. Like you said, you might not have that guy who can take the top off, but again, I'm interested to see how we challenge those receivers, because Virginia kind of just death by 1,000 paper cuts, man. They just absolutely tore us up underneath. And Miami's probably got a little bit faster, receivers than them. So if they get in space, you're going to have to bring those guys down. But I want to talk about the defense now, because this has been, absolutely night and day. It looks like you guys have hit a home run. New DC Corey Heatherman comes in. I think this is the third DC in 3 years for Mario, just kind of really searching to find that guy. And so far, so good. I will say, anytime you have a guy that just looks like a complete psychopath on the sideline, that's always good as a defensive coordinator, because he looks crazy. Like, he will chew your head off. But it's been huge, man. You also brought in a bunch of transfers in the secondary that has kind of helped as well there. So what has been the biggest reason for the turnaround for this defense? Is it the defensive coordinator, maybe a new scheme? Is it the players that you brought in? Or is it just both? Is it just a combination of having the weapons, but now using them correctly? And then the same thing with the offense. This defense has been really good so far, but is there a weakness on that side of the ball that if you were Florida State's offensive coordinator, besides maybe kneeling the ball every time so Miami would win, what would you attack on this defense if you were the offensive coordinator going against it?
Yeah, I definitely think, to your first point, it's a little bit of both with the defense and the turnaround. I think Corey Heatherman, his biggest thing coming in was that he just wanted to improve communication on the defense. I can't tell you how many times last year, right before the snap, our linebackers are looking at each other, defensive backs are talking. No one had any idea what coverage they were supposed to be in. And anytime there was any shift on the offensive side of the ball, our defense was just like, what is happening? So he came in and was like, I do not care if we call the wrong coverage and we get beat like that. I just want every single player on the defense in playing the same play in the coverage that we called. So that was first thing. He's like, we're simplifying this. We're improving communication. His other thing is that he's one of those positionless defense coaches. So he's all about matchups. He's all about putting your playmakers. Like, I'm thinking like a Reuben Bain on the edge. Where can we position Bain to like in this specific play? So you'll see him shift to the inside interior tackle and make a play there. You'll see our linebackers come up to the line and rush or drop back into coverage. Like, it's very much a positionless defense, very much about matchups and how can we be in the best position on that play. So it has worked out great so far. And there's just very little pre-snap miscommunication happening, and everyone seems to be on the same page. And then, like you said, the defensive back room, other than Carson Beck, is where we spent all of our portal money. Like, we completely revamped that room and spent millions to improve it. And so far it has worked out. Our defensive backs got torched last season, and this season it's just night and day. And then you got our own bright spot last year, OJ Frederick at corner, came back this year, and he's been great. So defensive back room is just vastly improved, and it was money well spent. I think where so far there hasn't been too much of a weakness on D. Where it could kind of rear its head is at the linebacker position. Wesley Bissainthe, Aguirre, Torre, they've played great to this point. Going up against FSU is a little bit of a different task because of that Gus Malzahn offense. There's so much eye discipline that needs to be had. You're dealing with someone like Castellanos, who's a very good runner. And so far we've done well against scramble. CJ Carr kind of scared us a little bit with some of his runs and his draw plays that gashed us. Up against USF, that was taken care of, and they have a great running quarterback, and we were able to shut him down. So that made me feel better. Lagway they had the one drive where they ran the ball pretty well, and he had some nice runs, but for the most part, shut it down. So it's going to be, I think this is their biggest test against this Florida State offense, as far as one, the eye discipline, and just being able to make open field tackles, being able to just keep Castellanos at bay and make him throw the ball. Like, that's the way that this defense is gonna win, is force him to throw the ball. Man coverage with our defensive backs, I feel pretty good about that matchup. So I think linebacker position to me is like there's still question marks there. And then our our second string defensive line. Once you like when we start subbing in defensive line, there's a huge drop off. You expect a little bit of a drop off, but it's been pretty significant this season. I know, I mean, between Bain and Mesidor, like those are two just all Americans. I mean, Bain has a chance of being in New York this year for a Heisman Trophy. So, but second string, it's like we need some more production out of that. And if how you mentioned FSU running up tempo, like that could be interesting if we start getting tired having to put in some secondary guys. And there's been a drop off there.
Yeah, I mean, and first off, you're killing it. I mean, you are giving us so much great info here, and I appreciate that. I definitely agree with you. Like, I did notice that the two defensive ends that you got, Bain and Mesidor, who are NFL level guys. I mean, let's be honest; these guys are elite level guys. They played every single snap against Florida. They played 48 of 60 snaps against Notre Dame. And so I just wonder how much gas is there in the tank if Florida State can get to that 70 to 80 snaps with the drop off, like you said, because, Gus Malzahn, he's one of them. He wants to get to the 12th round in the boxing match. He wants to lean on you for 3 quarters. And then in the 4th quarter, you're tired. But can they do that? Because this is a defense that hasn't given up 100 yards rushing in any single game. And that's the key for Gus Malzahn to win a game, is to run the ball. And so, man, I think it's going to be I think this is the best offense you guys have probably faced this season. So I think it will be a challenge, but man, this is the best defense we face, even against Alabama in game 1. I think Miami's defense is playing really, really well right now. So it's going to be a challenge for us. But just a couple more before we get out of here. Obviously, everybody watched us go on the road for the first time last week and get bit up in Charlottesville. Maybe it was a look ahead game. Maybe it was a travel on a short week. All this type of stuff. We were less than a touchdown favorite going up there to Charlottesville, so maybe Vegas knew something we didn't. You look at this game, less than a touchdown favorite. Miami now is the one making their first trip on the road away from Hard Rock. And, I mean, obviously we saw last week a lot of teams struggled on the road. Even if they did come out on top, they struggled. Miami 10-3 last year, 10 wins, all, basically every loss, all 3 losses came away from Hard Rock. So I think this could be a difference in the game. Doak is, it's not 100,000 like Tennessee or something like that, but it's going to be pretty loud. So just kind of give me some thoughts of how big a factor do you see the first road game being? Now, obviously, we know Carson Beck has played in some big games from a quarterback perspective, but it's still his first trip on the road with this team and this coaching staff and all that stuff, new coordinator on defense and whatnot. So tell me how big of a factor you think the road aspect will be in this game.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's not ideal. I think having your first road game being this is tough. And it's going to be interesting to see how this team responds. Like you said, Carson Beck he's played in the biggest of stages. So I'm not worried about him being phased by it, but even just everything that goes into like all the logistics that go into a road game and kind of going through those motions as a team for the first time, there could be some distractions there. And it's like, how do they block all that out and just play Miami football? Will be interesting to watch. And then I think about guys like Malachi Toney, who literally just turned 18 years old. And yeah, he's played great at Hard Rock, but now he's playing in front of 80,000 fans that are wanting him to fail. And so it's like, what does that look like? Bryce Fitzgerald, who's another freshman in the defensive backside. It's like, those are guys like, if he gets gashed early, how does he respond? It's all about their response, I think, in a road environment. That is key, especially with some of these young players. But one thing that Cristobal has done a great job of since he's gotten here is Miami's just been prepared. I think they were bad when he first got here. We lost some brutal games, but we always looked prepared. And I even think back to 2 years ago at Doak, and Miami was just nowhere near to FSU's level, and we still kind of played up to that level and like we're ready to go and weren't fazed by the environment. So I feel good about it, but it's obviously, like I said, it's like first road game at Doak, like gosh, couldn't be anything else. But Virginia, like the Friday night in Virginia is not great either. Like the Friday night games are so weird. So it's like, so you guys get it. It's one of those Friday night. Miami, I hope, never plays a weeknight game ever. I don't know if we've ever won one, it seems like, between Thursday night and Friday night. So, which we do play Friday night against Louisville in a couple weeks. So we'll see.
Man, we feel the same way. We hate non-Saturday games, and we got another one coming
Hate
against
it.
NC State. So I don't know how we drew two of those in the same
Oh,
season, but ACC gonna ACC. So what you gonna
yep.
do? So I'm gonna ask you the same question you asked me when I joined you for a Miami Inside or an inside look at Florida State here. And as we talked about, man, this is an open-ended question, pretty broad spectrum here. Miami wins if.
Yeah, it's the same answer I think I've given for every game with a question like that, and it's if they play Miami football by owning the trenches, like owning the line of scrimmage, controlling that is the brand of football they play. Miami is and you might be asking this next with how would they lose? And I'll just couple it in with this.
Yeah,
Miami
go
is
for it.
not a team that is going to do well in a shootout type game. They're not a team that is going to come from behind. Miami is a team that wants to control the clock, wants to just have that efficient offense, ground and pound, and kind of just wear teams down. And we've seen that this season with when it comes to the fourth quarter, the teams have been gassed. They don't want to tackle anymore. I mean, these big bruiser running backs coming up the middle, like they're just sick of it. We saw it for sure against Florida. We've been able to put teams away in the fourth quarter where games have on the scoreboard looked a little closer. So that's just how Miami wins. So if you start getting to a shootout situation where defense is giving up quick touchdowns, that could pose an issue for Miami. But yeah, I think if they just keep owning the trenches and controlling the line of scrimmage like they have been, that's how Miami wins this game.
Yeah, man. I think it's going to be a battle of two titans, right, on Saturday night. I mean, this is going to be you got a Miami offense that likes to run it. You got a Florida State offense that likes to run it. I mean, it's going to be a heavyweight bout, and so I
Yeah,
can't wait to see
old
how it
school.
plays out. Yeah, man, it's going to be old school. Just kind of see who can just outman each other on the field.
Yep.
Who just can take it from one another, and so I think it's going to be really exciting. But let's get down to brass tacks, man. We've talked a lot about this game. Now we got to see how it comes out in your mind. Now, most of you will see our preview show before this. I actually have Florida State bouncing back and winning at home in this one, but again, I'm picking mostly heart, not so much head on this one. But give me your thoughts on how this one plays out and what the final score looks like.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great game. And we saw the line originally open up Miami 4.5. It jumped to Miami 6.5. It's back down to Miami 4.5. People are expecting a close game. It's a rivalry. These are both two talented teams they're playing for a lot. There's a lot on the line in this game. So there's some Miami fans that think this is going to be a blowout, and it's just like you're crazy. I told people even with the Florida game, I was like, we are much better than Florida, but it's just different. Like these
Yeah.
games mean a little bit more. And if you're going to get a team's best, like this is when it happens. So I've got Miami winning. I got Miami final score 28-20.
Okay.
28-20. I think it's I think it's like a 21-20 game, and then Miami gets that drive we've seen all season where it's like we get the ball back, work the clock, run it, kind of put the knife in the nail in the coffin, if you could say so. I think 28-20 Canes.
Yeah, it's going to be, I'm with you. I think it's going to be a one-score game. I think it's going to be
Yeah.
close. It may even be almost like the Virginia game. Who has the ball last?
Right.
In that type of situation, but maybe a little bit more low scoring.
Yeah,
So
I
we'll
think
see,
so.
man. But I'm excited for Saturday night,
Yes,
7:30 on
sir.
ABC, national TV. Going to be a sold out crowd. Going to be crazy and dope. We're going to be down there. We're actually going to be having a tailgate for you guys if you're watching this in Lot 7 at Doak Campbell Stadium, right across from Dick Howser Stadium, our baseball field. I would love to have everybody come out, man. I would really appreciate that because we're going to have a good time. We're going to have TVs. We're going to be watching the games, all that good stuff. So really excited for Saturday, man. There's so much that goes into this game. I love this game. But before we get out of here, Joe, I just want to say thank you for coming on and giving us some absolutely great insights into this Miami team, this Miami game. You've been one of the best that we've had so far on here to preview the opponent, and I really appreciate that. So tell the people, tell us about Miami Knights, what you guys got going on there, kind of what got you kind of into this whole thing, and tell the people where they can find you if they're interested to see what you guys got going on this week.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, Miami Nights podcast, where everywhere you listen to podcasts, we're also on YouTube. If you want to see our faces talk like idiots too. So we got started 3 years ago. It was one of those things. It's me, my brother, and then one of our best friends, Kurt, that we all just grew up diehard Hurricane fans, and we've been season ticket holders for a really long time, and we've seen a lot of bad, some good, but we after each game, you know, we would just talk for hours and hours and hours. It's like, you know what? Give us a microphone. It's time to vent. We started the second year of Mario Cristobal era, and boy, has there been some interesting moments. But we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel here. So, but yeah, we just have fun talking like a bunch of idiots. I was actually talking to Jesse earlier. Like, this guy knows his stuff, and like as far as like, oh, yeah, you got it down. We don't know as much. We're definitely talking out of the heart a lot more than we are the brain. So, but it's all good. So we're having a good time. But Miami Nights podcast.
Yeah, man, make sure you guys go check them out. And it's funny because like you see the real ones when you stand in the paint after the good and the bad, right? Like, you know, we've been trash talking on social media with Miami fans this week, and it's funny because they're like, don't hide after this. I'm like, I survived 2-10. You can't hurt me. I'm already dead inside. It's fine. Like,
Right.
I've been through worse than this. So it is what it is.
Miami lost to Middle Tennessee State a few years ago. So where it's like, yeah, there's very few things that can really knock us down.
Dude, I literally sat row 1 behind Jacksonville State's bench for the Hail Mary. So, like, I have been to the lowest point of the low. I've also seen us win a national championship, so I have that in my mind too. But yeah, man, I really appreciate that. This collab is going to be brought to you by the College Huddle. He is our Miami representative over there at Miami Nights Podcast. Of course, we represent Florida State. And guys, make sure we check that out. That's where we get all these from. We're going to be doing a lot of these throughout the season for every team we have. They do great work over there. So we appreciate the College Huddle making this possible. And that's going to be it. Joe, I appreciate you coming on, my man. I can't, in all good faith, I can't wish you luck on Saturday night.
I understand.
But, you know, maybe the rest of the season going forward. But, man, I'm looking forward to a good game, and I appreciate you coming on. And, guys, we will catch you on the next one. As always, go Noles.